You are throwing your life away. Those were the words my aunt shouted across the courtyard as the entire family stared at me in disbelief. If you marry that poor boy, don't ever come back here asking us for help. I looked over at the man standing quietly beneath the mango tree. His sandals were worn. His shirt had been stitched so many times that it barely resembled the original fabric. He owned no land, no livestock, no bank accounts. The only thing he possessed was an old bicycle that squeaked every time he rode it. Yet when our eyes met, I saw something no one else could. I saw determination. My name is Adanna, and this is the story of how the poorest man in our village became one of the wealthiest businessmen in the region, and how the same people who laughed at us eventually begged us for jobs. But before I continue, let me take you back to where it all began. I was born in a small village in southeastern Nigeria. My father was a respected school teacher and my mother sold fabrics in the local market. We were never wealthy, but everyone knew our family. People often said I was one of the prettiest girls in the village. As I grew older, suitors began visiting our home. There was Chinedu, whose father owned several transport buses. There was Emeka, a banker from Lagos, who returned every Christmas wearing expensive suits. There was even the son of a local chief. Every one of them had money. Every one of them had status. Then there was David. David had neither. His father had died when he was only 12, leaving behind debts instead of inheritance. His mother struggled to feed 4 children by roasting corn beside the roadside. Many days, David skipped meals so his younger sisters could eat. He worked wherever anyone would hire him. Some mornings he carried cement at construction sites. Other days, he harvested cassava for farmers. At night, he repaired broken radios and old generators after teaching himself from borrowed books. He never complained. He simply worked. The first time we spoke was at the village well. My bucket slipped from my hands and rolled down the hill. Before I could chase after it, David ran after it barefoot. By the time he returned, he was covered in mud. "I'm sorry," I said. He smiled. "It wasn't your fault." That simple smile stayed with me for days. Unlike the wealthy men who constantly bragged about what they owned, David never tried to impress anyone. He listened more than he talked. He respected everyone. He treated elderly people kindly. Even children followed him around because he always fixed their broken toys. Slowly, friendship became love. When my parents found out, everything changed. My father refused to speak to me. My mother cried almost every night. My relatives said I had been bewitched. What future does he have? Love cannot buy food. You'll spend your entire life suffering. The gossip spread through the village like wildfire. Women whispered whenever I passed. Young men laughed openly. Even children repeated what they heard from their parents. "There goes the girl who wants to marry a beggar." Those words hurt. Sometimes I cried after everyone had gone to sleep. Not because I doubted David, but because I hated disappointing my family. One evening I asked him the question everyone else wanted answered. "David, do you honestly believe things will ever change?" He became quiet. Then he looked toward the setting sun. "I don't know when," he admitted. "I don't know how. But I know I wasn't created to remain poor forever." His confidence wasn't loud. It wasn't arrogant. It was calm, steady. That night I made my decision. If he was willing to fight for his future, I would fight beside him. 3 months later, we married. The wedding was so small that many people didn't even know it had happened. My father refused to attend. Only my younger brother secretly came to congratulate us. After the ceremony, David and I moved into a tiny one-room house with a rusted zinc roof. Whenever it rained, we placed pots and buckets around the room to catch the leaking water. Our mattress lay directly on the floor. Sometimes we laughed because we had to move it around the room whenever another leak appeared. Life was difficult, very difficult. Some days I sold vegetables from sunrise until evening and earned barely enough to buy rice. David continued taking every job he could find: construction, farming, repair work, motorcycle deliveries, anything honest. Still, every month he set aside a tiny amount of money, even if it was the equivalent of only a few dollars. He called it the future fund. I thought he was saving to build a house. I was wrong. One evening he spread dozens of notebooks across our floor. Inside were pages filled with numbers, business ideas, transportation routes, wholesale prices. He had been planning for years. I want to buy crops directly from farmers, he explained. They are being cheated by middlemen. If I can pay them fairly and sell directly to the city. He paused. Everyone wins. The idea sounded impossible. We barely had enough money to survive. How could we start a business? But dreams have a strange way of finding people who refuse to quit. Months later, David convinced an elderly retired trader to lend him enough money to purchase one second-hand pickup truck. It broke down constantly. Sometimes he spent more repairing it than transporting goods. More than once, I wondered if we had made a terrible mistake. Then disaster struck. One night, thieves stole almost an entire shipment of produce. We lost nearly everything. I saw him cry. I sat beside him and held his hand. No, I replied. You only fail when you stop trying. Those words changed everything. Instead of giving up, David worked even harder. He personally visited every farmer. He delivered every order himself. He became known for one thing above all else: honesty. If he promised to pay on Friday, he paid on Friday. If produce wasn't good enough, he rejected it instead of cheating buyers. Slowly, people trusted him. Trust became customers. Customers became contracts. Contracts became warehouses. Within 5 years, David owned several trucks and employed dozens of workers, including many of the same young men who had once mocked him. Then came the day no one expected. The village chief invited us to the annual harvest celebration as guests of honor. The same people who had laughed at our marriage stood and applauded as we entered. I noticed familiar faces: the woman who once called me foolish, the uncle who said I would return home begging, the wealthy businessman who had laughed when I rejected his proposal. None of them laughed anymore. After the ceremony, people lined up to greet us. Some wanted jobs, others wanted business advice. Several parents even asked if David would mentor their sons. As we prepared to leave, my father slowly walked toward us. He looked much older than I remembered. Without saying a word, he hugged David tightly. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I judged you by your pockets instead of your character." David smiled. "There is nothing to forgive." That moment meant more to me than all the wealth we had accumulated. Years later, our company built classrooms, drilled clean water wells, and provided scholarships for children from low-income families. People often assume our story is about becoming rich. It isn't. It's about believing in someone's character before the world believes in their success. Money can disappear overnight. Status can fade, but discipline, honesty, resilience, and kindness create opportunities that wealth alone never can. Whenever young women ask me how I knew David would succeed, I always tell them the same thing. I didn't know. I simply chose a man who refused to give up, and sometimes that makes all the difference.